The Imperial broadcast cut through every communications channel across known space. On thousands of worlds, billions of beings watched as Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Empire's High Court, her posture straight and dignified despite the restraints binding her hands. The charges were read in the Empire's formal language, each word precisely chosen to emphasize human inadequacy, sedition, conspiracy, violation of Imperial protocol, and most revealing of their true fears, unauthorized technological advancement. Admiral James Martinez watched from Earth's Central Command, his weathered hands gripping the edge of his console. Around him, the command center remained eerily silent. They had known this was coming. Chen had warned them. But knowing didn't make it easier to watch. The sentence, announced the Imperial Adjudicator, his crystalline form shimmering with what humans had learned to recognize as satisfaction, is termination. Let all primitive species witness the price of defiance. Chen's voice, when she spoke her final words, carried neither fear nor anger. You believe this moment will teach humanity its place, she said, her eyes scanning the chamber as if memorizing every detail. You're right, but not in the way you imagine. The execution was swift, clinical, and broadcast in its entirety. The Empire wanted no doubts about their message. Resist, and be eliminated. They expected panic. They expected protests. They expected desperate pleas for mercy or rash declarations of war. Instead, Earth went silent. All human colonies, outposts, and vessels ceased communication simultaneously. Quantum channels fell silent. Trade routes emptied. Even the constant background chatter of human entertainment broadcasts, which many Imperial citizens had secretly enjoyed, vanished completely. In the Imperial capital, the High Council celebrated what they saw as submission. See how quickly they learn, the economic minister chittered to his colleagues. Like all primitive species, they understand only force. But in a secure chamber deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Admiral Martinez watched a different kind of countdown. Operation Nightfall, Chen's masterpiece of strategic planning, was already in motion. She had spent years preparing for this possibility, embedding agents, gathering intelligence, and most importantly, understanding the Empire's greatest weakness, their absolute certainty in their own superiority. Sir, his aide interrupted his thoughts, we're receiving the confirmation signals. All deep cover operatives report ready. The quantum infiltration network is in place. First strike targets are mapped and locked. Martinez nodded, remembering his last private conversation with Chen. She had smiled then, not the diplomatic smile she wore for Imperial ceremonies, but the fierce grin of someone who had seen 10 moves ahead in a game her opponents didn't even know they were playing. When they do this, she had told him, they'll expect either submission or chaos. They don't understand that humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our ability to unite in silence, to hold our breath and wait for the perfect moment to act. The Admiral opened a secure channel to Earth's hidden fleet commanders. Across 20 star systems, humanity's true military strength lay concealed behind asteroid fields, within gas giant storms, and in dimensional pockets their Imperial observers had never thought to check. Years of apparent technological stagnation had been the perfect cover for quantum leaps in innovation. All commands, Martinez spoke softly into the quantum encrypted channel. Initiate Protocol Lazarus. Authorization code. Chen's gambit. Acknowledgements flowed in, text only, each fleet confirming ready status. In the Imperial capital, the celebration continued. They never noticed the microscopic changes in their quantum networks, the shadowy presence of human consciousness infiltrating their unbreakable encryption. Chen's last message, scheduled for release 1 year after her death, waited in secure servers across human space. Martinez had read it only once, but its words were burned into his memory. The stars themselves will remember this day, not as the end of humanity's dreams, but as the moment an empire learned that true strength lies not in the power to take life, but in the wisdom to know when apparent defeat is merely the prelude to victory. The countdown reached 0. Across Imperial space, in perfect synchronization, humanity prepared to teach the galaxy a lesson in underestimating the quiet ones. Operation Nightfall had begun. Chief Inspector Cora of Imperial Security had built her career on noticing what others dismissed. Her crystalline sensory appendages, far more sophisticated than her colleagues, detected patterns in seemingly random data. Today, those patterns screamed of danger. Another discrepancy, Inspector, her assistant projected onto her data surface. Cargo manifest from the Centauri route shows a 0.03% variation from standard shipping volumes. Most officials would ignore such a tiny deviation. The Empire's logistics network processed billions of transactions daily across thousands of worlds. Small errors were considered normal, expected, even healthy, signs of an active economy. But Cora had studied humans. During her early career, she'd been stationed on Mars during the first trade negotiations. She remembered watching them build their domed cities, noting how they'd incorporated backup systems within backup systems, each disguised as inefficiency. Cross-reference all sub-0.1% shipping variations from the past solar cycle, she commanded. The results painted a disturbing picture, a web of minor discrepancies, each insignificant alone, forming a pattern that spread across Imperial space like a spider's web. In her private chambers, Cora accessed the encrypted archives. Her security clearance, highest among non-council members, gave her access to files even most Imperial leaders never saw. She found what she sought in the historical section. First contact protocols from 3 centuries ago. The official record stated that humanity had been discovered by Imperial scouts, a primitive species barely achieving solar system travel. But these files told a different story. Humanity had encountered alien life centuries before the Empire found Earth. The evidence had been buried, deemed too dangerous for public knowledge. Query. She transmitted to the archive system. Display all surveillance records of Ambassador Chen's final week. The footage showed Chen in her cell, appearing to meditate. Imperial psychologists had reported this as stress response, a primitive coping mechanism. But Cora noticed something else. Subtle patterns in Chen's breathing, movements that seemed random but repeated with precise timing. A message from her network interrupted her research. Another anomaly. Quantum communication relays experiencing microsecond delays. The technical division had dismissed it as routine fluctuation, but Cora overlaid the delay patterns with the shipping discrepancies. They matched perfectly. Security override Cora 7-1. She transmitted to the High Council's emergency channel. Request immediate audience. Critical security breach detected. The response came swiftly. Request denied. Council in celebration of human submission. Do not disturb with minor concerns. Cora's sensory crystals vibrated with frustration. They couldn't see it. Everything was connected. The shipping variations created gaps in Imperial oversight. The quantum delays suggested system infiltration. Chen's meditation patterns matched ancient human documents describing quantum consciousness techniques. In her centuries of service, Cora had learned that humans were anything but primitive. Their apparent technological limitations masked a different kind of advancement. While the Empire built its power on rigid hierarchies and absolute control, humans developed in chaotic, unpredictable ways. She accessed her private terminal, bypassing official channels to contact her network of field agents. The responses confirmed her fears. Increased energy signatures from supposedly abandoned human outposts, mysterious signal bursts that disappeared too quickly to trace, and subtle gravitational distortions near major Imperial facilities. The humans weren't in disarray. They were executing a plan centuries in the making. As if confirming her conclusion, her quantum terminal flickered, just for a microsecond. In that instant, she saw a message that shouldn't have been possible through Imperial encryption. They thought we would teach them fear. Instead, they will learn respect. The message disappeared, leaving no trace in the system logs. But Cora knew what she had seen. The Empire's perfect encryption, the foundation of their control, had been compromised. And if that was possible, everything they believed about human capabilities was wrong. She began composing a priority alert to the High Council, knowing they would likely ignore it. In the distance, celebration music echoed through the imperial capital's crystal spires. The Empire celebrated victory, blind to the whispers in the dark that heralded their greatest challenge. The humans weren't coming. They were already here. The message that reached Imperial Central Command carried the highest priority marker ever used in the Empire's history. Quantum network compromised. Unknown extent. Origin. Human. In the Central Command's quantum research facility, lead architect Vensa's crystalline form vibrated with disbelief as data streams showed the impossible. The Empire's quantum encryption wasn't merely breached. It was being altered in transit, messages arriving with microscopically different signatures than when they departed. Impossible, Vensa projected to the Emergency Council. Our quantum encryption is based on fundamental universal constants. It cannot be compromised without violating the laws of physics themselves. A classified file appeared on their screens, transmitted from Earth's now broken silence. The sender, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, Department of Quantum Consciousness Studies, Tokyo University. The Empire had dismissed her research as primitive meditation techniques, irrelevant to real quantum science. They had never been more wrong. For centuries, Dr. Tanaka's message began. You watched us study meditation and consciousness, assuming we sought spiritual enlightenment. You never asked why Earth's greatest quantum physicists spent their careers researching human consciousness instead of building better computers. The file contained research data that made Vensa's crystalline structure resonate with shock. Humans had discovered something unprecedented. Their consciousness could influence quantum states in ways that defied imperial understanding. While the Empire built increasingly complex quantum computers, humanity had turned their own minds into quantum interpreters. In a secure facility beneath Mount Fuji, Dr. Tanaka sat connected to a neural interface, her trained mind joining thousands of others in a vast quantum consciousness network. Each human operator could detect and influence quantum states through years of specialized meditation training. Together, they formed a living quantum computer that the Empire's rigid systems could neither detect nor resist. The quantum realm isn't just mathematics, her message continued. It's alive with possibility, responsive to consciousness itself. You built beautiful machines to manipulate it, never realizing that conscious minds could do so much more. Across imperial space, quantum communications began failing in cascading patterns. Emergency backup systems activated, only to find their quantum paths already occupied by whispered conversations that disappeared when examined. The Empire's unbreakable codes were being broken not by superior technology, but by minds that could see and touch quantum probability itself. In the imperial capital, Vensa received a direct neural transmission that bypassed all security protocols. The sender, Sarah Chen. The timestamp, 1 hour before her execution. Your quantum encryption was perfect. Chen's message acknowledged. Unbreakable by any technological means, but you never considered that consciousness itself might be quantum in nature. While you watched us build starships and colonies, our true work was internal, developing abilities you thought belonged to science fiction. The message contained proof. Detailed scans showing human brains entangled with quantum fields in ways imperial science had deemed impossible. Each meditation technique passed down through generations was actually a carefully designed protocol for quantum manipulation. Every human colony had its meditation centers, now revealed as quantum consciousness training facilities. We could have shared this knowledge, Chen's final message continued. But you chose domination over cooperation. Remember, the power to break your quantum encryption isn't our greatest achievement. It's merely the first step in showing you how little you truly understand about consciousness and quantum reality. Vensa watched in helpless fascination as imperial quantum networks transformed into something new. Human operators weren't simply breaking encryption. They were restructuring quantum pathways, creating a new form of communication that melded technology and consciousness into something beyond imperial science. In that moment, Vence understood the true scope of humanity's achievement. The Empire had built its power on controlling quantum technology, believing their mastery was absolute. But humans had discovered that consciousness itself was the key to quantum reality, making every trained human mind a potential quantum computer more sophisticated than the Empire's finest machines. The age of pure technological quantum computing was over. The era of quantum consciousness had begun, and humanity were its pioneers. In the depths of Mount Fuji, Dr. Tanaka smiled as she felt the quantum networks shift and change. The Empire was about to learn that true power lay not in controlling reality, but in understanding how consciousness itself shaped the quantum fabric of existence. The Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion hung in space like a crystalline mountain, its 100-kilometer length casting shadows across the stars. Admiral Xax watched the tactical display as his fleet of 20 capital ships moved into attack formation. Intelligence had finally located a human military staging area in the Proxima Centauri system. Primitive vessels detected, his sensor officer reported. Multiple small signatures emerging from the asteroid field. Size analysis indicates courier ships. Xax's crystalline command interface sparkled with amusement. They send messengers to face our dreadnoughts. Perhaps they wish to surrender. The laughter of his bridge crew cut short as the tactical display erupted with new data. The courier ships were accelerating at impossible speeds, their trajectories defying standard physics models. Each vessel was smaller than an Imperial shuttle, their hulls gleaming with an organic crystalline structure that seemed to pulse with inner light. Dr. Lisa Chen watched the battle unfold from her command center within the Firefly flagship Memory of Earth. Her mother's execution had driven her to perfect this technology, ships that merged biological principles with quantum engineering. Each vessel contained a neural interface linked to a single pilot. Their consciousness extended through quantum fields to become one with their ship. Firefly Squadron Alpha, execute dance pattern Sierra, she transmitted. Squadron Beta, prepare for probability shift. The tiny human ships moved like a swarm of bioluminescent creatures in Earth's oceans, their patterns seeming random yet perfectly coordinated. Imperial targeting systems, designed to track large capital ships, struggled to lock onto vessels that appeared to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Impossible. Xax's weapons officer shouted as the first wave of human ships passed directly through their shields. They're using quantum tunneling on a macroscopic scale. The Firefly ships weren't just small, they were designed to exploit quantum principles on a scale the Empire had never imagined possible. Each pilot's consciousness, enhanced through Dr. Chen's quantum interface, could perceive and navigate probability spaces that Imperial science considered purely theoretical. Target their shield generators, Lisa ordered, her own consciousness merged with her ship's systems. Through the quantum interface, she felt rather than saw the battle unfolding across multiple probability states simultaneously. Remember the drills. Consciousness guides probability. Make the impossible path become the only path. Imperial shields, designed to repel energy weapons and physical projectiles, proved useless against ships that could quantum tunnel through solid matter. The Firefly squadrons danced through the Imperial formation, their organic crystalline hulls pulsing with concentrated quantum energy. Aboard the Eternal Dominion, Xax watched in horror as his mighty fleet was systematically disabled by ships he could barely track. How? He demanded. How are they predicting our every countermeasure? The answer came in a transmission that bypassed all encryption. You built your ships to dominate space. Lisa Chen's voice echoed through Imperial command channels. We built ours to dance with quantum reality itself. Every Firefly pilot is both consciousness and quantum computer, ship and navigator, possibility and reality merged into one. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. Not a single Imperial crew member died. Instead, the Firefly ships had precisely targeted key systems, leaving the mighty dreadnoughts powerless and adrift. The Empire's greatest battle fleet had been neutralized by ships their sensors still classified as courier vessels. In the aftermath, Lisa ordered her squadrons to maintain their dance-like patrol pattern around the disabled Imperial ships. The organic crystalline hulls of the Firefly ships pulsed with soft light, reminiscent of Earth's bioluminescent creatures. Each pulse transmitted quantum data that the Imperial sensors could detect but not decode, a reminder that humanity's mastery of quantum reality extended far beyond mere technology. "Send word to Admiral Martinez," Lisa commanded, her consciousness still merged with her ship's quantum systems. "Operation Firefly Dance is successful. The Empire now knows that size and power mean nothing when consciousness itself can reshape probability." As rescue ships arrived to evacuate the Imperial crews, Sax realized that his mighty fleet had been defeated not by superior firepower, but by humans who had learned to make quantum physics itself dance to the music of consciousness. Commander Wei stood on the observation deck of the Solar Wind, watching streams of plasma arc between the ship's quantum sails. The vessel looked more like an ancient Chinese junk than a warship, its crystalline sails stretching for kilometers to catch the solar currents that the Empire had always considered navigational hazards. "Status report on the Imperial Pursuit Fleet," his first officer announced, her holographic form shimmering beside him. "They're still following our projected course toward the Arcturus system." Wei smiled, his weathered face reflecting the starlight. "And our actual course. The solar current will intersect with the Alpha Centauri magnetic stream in 3 minutes. Fleet is in position to ride the convergence." Below deck, in the ship's quantum navigation center, human consciousness pilots maintain their meditative state, feeling the currents of space like ancient sailors reading the ocean's moods. The Empire's rigid approach to faster-than-light travel relied on brute force, carrying holes in spacetime. Humanity had chosen a different path, learning to sense and ride the natural flows of quantum energy that permeated the universe. "Guardian Station Helios reports ready," the communications officer added. "They've mapped the gravitational eddies around the target system." The Guardian stations had been humanity's masterpiece of misdirection. For decades, the Empire had observed these apparent research outposts, dismissing them as primitive attempts at scientific advancement. They never realized each station was actually a gravitational manipulation system designed to subtly influence the very fabric of space-time. "Begin the convergence," Wei ordered. "Let's show them how humanity navigates the stars." The Solar Wind's quantum sails shifted, their crystalline structure resonating with the solar plasma streams. Around the ship, space itself seemed to ripple as gravitational forces bent to human understanding. Wei had studied ancient Chinese naval texts extensively, learning how ancient sailors had used natural currents to achieve what their enemies considered impossible. "Imperial fleet detecting our course change," Tactical reported. "They're attempting to calculate our exit vector." "They won't succeed," Wei said confidently. "They're trying to predict our course using physical laws. We're not just following the currents, we're dancing with them." The Guardian stations activated simultaneously, their carefully planned positions creating a network of gravitational interference patterns. To Imperial sensors, the resulting space-time distortions appeared as natural phenomena, too chaotic to be artificial. But Wei's fleet had trained for years to navigate these precise patterns. "Solar current convergence in 5 seconds, navigation announced. All ships report quantum sails aligned." The Empire's pursuit fleet watched in confusion as the human ships suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, riding the convergence of solar winds and magnetic fields in ways their tactical computers insisted were theoretically impossible. The Guardian station's gravitational manipulation created paths through spacetime that only human consciousness pilots could perceive and navigate. Imperial fleet attempting to follow, Tactical reported with a hint of amusement. "Their engines are at maximum power, but they're fighting against the currents instead of working with them." Wei watched as his fleet executed a maneuver that looked more like a choreographed dance than a military operation. Each ship rode different currents, their quantum sails adjusting continuously to the changing flows of space. The Empire's mighty warships, for all their power, might as well have been trying to catch the wind in their hands. "Send the final message to Imperial Command," Wei ordered. "Let them understand what they're witnessing." The transmission was brief. "Your empire built its power on dominating nature. Humanity learned instead to listen, understand, and dance with the universe itself. Every current you fight, every eddy you ignore, every gravitational ripple you dismiss, these are the paths we've learned to walk between the stars." As the solar wind led its fleet through the impossible convergence of quantum currents, Wei remembered the ancient proverb his grandmother had taught him. "The reed that bends with the wind survives the storm that shatters the mighty oak." The Empire had built its fleets to shatter the laws of physics. Humanity had learned instead to bend with them, finding paths through space that no amount of brute force could match. In their arrogance, the Empire had forgotten that true mastery comes not from commanding nature, but from understanding it deeply enough to make the impossible seem effortless. The desert world of Kepler 186 blazed under its red sun, its 3 moons casting multiple shadows across the Imperial settlement. Maya Rodriguez, former Earth Relief Corps coordinator and now commander of the humanitarian fleet Hope's Dawn, studied the holographic display of the colony's evacuation progress. "Another 1,000 refugees processed in the last hour," her logistics officer reported. "The Imperial citizens are confused. They keep asking why we're helping them." Maya remembered Ambassador Chen's words during their last meeting. "If war comes, remember that our strength lies not in how many we defeat, but in how many we save." Those words had shaped the evacuation protocols, now being implemented across former Imperial space. "Tell them the same thing we tell everyone," Maya replied. "Earth protects all civilians, regardless of species or allegiance." The Imperial propaganda had painted humans as savages, claiming their primitive nature made them incapable of distinguishing between military and civilian targets. Instead, humanity's forces arrived with medical supplies, food, and evacuation ships, moving entire populations to safety before engaging military targets. Young Imperial citizen Zarlin watched from the refugee processing center as human medical teams treated the sick and injured. His crystalline form vibrated with confusion as he observed their methodical care. The Empire had taught that humans were physically and morally inferior, yet here they were, demonstrating a level of ethical consideration that the Empire had never shown its own subject species. "Why do you expend such resources on us?" he asked Maya during the evening coordination meeting. "Your ships could be carrying weapons instead of medical supplies." Maya's response was accompanied by a holographic display of Earth's history. "We learned the cost of indiscriminate warfare centuries ago," she explained. "Power without compassion creates only temporary victories. True strength lies in breaking cycles of violence." The display showed scenes from Earth's past conflicts, then shifted to images of former enemies working together to rebuild. "Every civilian we save today," Maya continued, "is one more voice for peace tomorrow." Across the settlement, human relief teams worked alongside local volunteers, teaching them to use advanced medical technology that the Empire had restricted to military use. Each refugee center included education modules explaining Earth's historical development from conflict to cooperation. Signal from the quantum network, Maya's communications officer interrupted. "Imperial Defense Fleet approaching the system. Estimated time to arrival, 6 hours." The evacuation protocols shifted into high gear, but there was no panic, no chaos. Every human relief worker had trained extensively for this scenario. Maya's fleet began transitioning refugees to their ships while maintaining perfect order and calm. "Watch closely," Maya told Zarlin, who had become an informal liaison between the humans and his people. "Notice how our ships are positioned to shield the civilian evacuation routes. Every tactical decision prioritizes saving lives over military advantage." The young imperial citizen observed the human fleet's movements with growing understanding. Their ships' formations weren't just defensive, they were deliberately drawing attention away from the evacuation corridors. Even their choice of approach vectors seemed designed to minimize the psychological impact on civilian observers. When the Imperial fleet arrived, they found only empty settlements and a small human rearguard that disappeared into quantum currents before engagement. The evacuation had been completed with such precision that not a single civilian remained in harm's way. In her quarters aboard Hope's Dawn, Maya recorded her daily log. The Empire expected us to match their brutality. Instead, we're showing them a strength they never considered, the power of compassion combined with capability. Every evacuation teaches them that humanity's advancement isn't measured in weapons, but in our capacity to care for all sentient beings. Zarlin, now helping coordinate refugee services aboard the human ship, shared his observations on the Imperial Quantum Network. They told us humans were primitives who would destroy us. Instead, they risked their lives to save ours. Perhaps it is we who have been primitive, measuring civilization by its capacity for destruction rather than its commitment to preservation. The message spread across Imperial space, carried by thousands of saved civilians. Humanity wasn't just winning a war, they were transforming how an entire galaxy understood the nature of strength. Commander Aisha Patel stood in the heart of the Imperial capital's quantum archives, her consciousness interface humming with activity. Around her, the crystalline walls contained millennia of Imperial history, records the Empire claimed were unalterable and absolute. Her team of quantum infiltrators had spent months planning this mission, but its true architect had been Ambassador Chen. Archive access achieved. Lieutenant Zhang reported, his consciousness merging with the quantum storage systems, beginning data extraction. The Empire's historical records are interesting. Interesting how? Aisha asked, while maintaining her focus on defending their quantum access points. They didn't just hide the truth, they edited their own history, but they kept the originals, probably as insurance. Ambassador Chen was right about everything. The quantum archives revealed centuries of careful manipulation. The Empire hadn't discovered humanity. They had been watching Earth for generations, carefully manipulating events to ensure humans would appear primitive when official first contact occurred. Their fear of human potential had driven them to elaborate deception. Princess Tara, youngest member of the Imperial ruling family, received the first data burst in her private quarters. Her crystalline form trembled as she processed the truth about her civilization's history with humanity. The documents were undeniable, quantum-sealed records from the Empire's own highest councils. Security breach in the archives. Imperial guards broadcast across the capital's network. All access points locked down. But it was too late. Commander Patel's team had already initiated Chen's final protocol. The truth was flowing across every quantum channel, impossible to contain. The Empire's own perfect record-keeping became the weapon that exposed their deception. They're trying to shut down the network, Lieutenant Zhang warned. Aisha smiled. Let them try. We're not just broadcasting data. We're sharing consciousness. Every Imperial citizen connected to the quantum network is experiencing these memories firsthand. The records showed everything. Early Imperial scouts encountering human quantum consciousness researchers centuries ago. The Empire's horrified realization that humans could naturally perceive and influence quantum states. The careful orchestration of human development to push it away from these discoveries. Princess Stara watched recordings of her own ancestors debating humanity's fate. They possess a dangerous gift, one emperor had declared. Their consciousness naturally interfaces with quantum reality. They must be guided away from this power, made to focus on physical technology instead. But humanity hadn't been diverted. They had simply learned to hide their true research. While building starships and colonies that the Empire could observe, they had quietly developed their consciousness abilities. Every meditation center, every spiritual retreat, every psychological research facility had doubled as a quantum consciousness training ground. Through the quantum network, Sarah felt the shock rippling through her society. The Empire had prided itself on technological superiority, never realizing that their rigid adherence to pure machinery had blinded them to consciousness-based quantum manipulation. Message from the human fleet. Sarah's private channel chimed. The sender, Sarah Chen, timestamp. Moments before her execution. Your empire chose fear over understanding. Chen's message began. You saw our potential and tried to bury it. But truth, like starlight, cannot be contained forever. I give my life not for revenge, but for revelation. Across the capital, young imperial citizens began accessing restricted archives, finding more evidence of the Empire's systematic suppression of consciousness-based quantum science. The rigid hierarchy that had sustained imperial power for millennia began to crack as truth after truth emerged. Final archive seal broken, Lieutenant Zhang reported. All records are now public. Shall we begin Phase 2? Aisha thought of Chen's last briefing. No. Let them process this truth. The Empire's own conscience will do more damage than any weapon we could deploy. She was right. As the truth spread, the Empire faced something more powerful than military defeat, the moral awakening of its own people. Young imperial citizens, led by Princess Sarah herself, began questioning the very foundations of their society. We thought ourselves superior. Sarah broadcast across the quantum network, but our fear of humanity's potential led us to betray our own principles. Perhaps it is time for the Empire to learn rather than suppress, to grow rather than control. The revolution that followed would reshape galactic society, not through force of arms, but through the irresistible power of truth finally set free. The great hall of the newly formed Galactic Assembly gleamed under the light of 3 suns, its crystalline architecture blending imperial precision with human artistic elements. At its center stood Ambassador Chen's empty chair, transformed from a symbol of martyrdom into a reminder of the change one consciousness could inspire. Admiral Martinez, now Earth's senior representative to the Assembly, stood with Princess Sarah, recently elected as the Reform Party's leader, observing delegates from 1,000 worlds engage in open dialogue. The scene would have been impossible just months ago. Your mother's final message goes public today, Sarah said, her crystalline form refracting light in patterns that humans now recognized as deep emotion. The timing seems appropriate. On countless worlds across former imperial space, quantum networks activated simultaneously. Sarah Chen's image appeared, recorded the morning of her execution, her calm demeanor masking the weight of the moment. To all sentient beings who received this message, she began, I speak to you not as a martyr, but as a bridge. My death was neither an end nor a beginning, but a transformation, much like the one our galaxy now faces. In the assembly hall, representatives fell silent, watching. Even those who had opposed Earth's inclusion in the new government paused to listen. The Empire's greatest fear was not our technology, but our understanding that consciousness itself is the true force that shapes reality. They saw our potential to merge mind and quantum science, and their fear drove them to suppress rather than understand. Quantum consciousness interfaces across the galaxy hummed with activity as beings of all species absorbed her words. The message wasn't just being transmitted, it was being experienced, shared through the quantum consciousness techniques that humanity had refined over centuries. But fear breeds fear, and suppression leads only to resistance. Today, as you build something new from the remnants of empire, remember, true power lies not in controlling reality, but in understanding how consciousness shapes it. Every species brings unique perspectives, different ways of perceiving and influencing the quantum fabric of existence. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, attending virtually from her quantum research center beneath Mount Fuji, felt tears form as she remembered her last conversation with Chen. They had known the price of their plan, but Chen had seen beyond personal survival to a greater transformation. I choose to believe, Chen's message continued, that my execution will serve not as a spark for revenge, but as a catalyst for change. The Empire sought to teach humanity its place. Instead, let us all learn a greater truth, that our place in the universe is not fixed by hierarchy or tradition, but shaped by our collective consciousness. In orbit above the assembly world, Commander White's solar ships danced with Imperial vessels in a joint training exercise, teaching each other their unique approaches to space travel. The sight of quantum sails alongside crystalline dreadnoughts symbolized the emerging synthesis of different technologies and philosophies. The chair will remain empty, Chen's image concluded, gesturing to what would become her memorial seat in the assembly. Not as a reminder of loss, but as an invitation. Let it represent the space between what we are and what we might become, a bridge between past and future, between species and philosophies, between consciousness and cosmos. Maya Rodriguez, overseeing the integration of Earth's humanitarian protocols into the Assembly's emergency response systems, watched alien children playing in the Assembly gardens. They were using simplified quantum consciousness interfaces to share experiences across species barriers, learning each other's ways of perceiving reality. Our greatest strength, Chen's final words echoed, lies not in our ability to fight, but in our capacity to understand. Not in our power to destroy, but in our choice to preserve. Not in our technology, but in our consciousness. Let this transformation show that the truest victory comes not from dominating the universe, but from learning to dance with it. As the message ended, Admiral Martinez and Princess Stara joined hands in the human gesture of partnership. Around them, representatives of 1,000 worlds began discussing Chen's vision of consciousness-driven quantum science, sharing insights their species had kept hidden for generations. The empty chair stood silent, no longer a symbol of humanity's defiance, but a reminder that the space between stars, like the space between minds, was not a void to be conquered, but a bridge to be built, one conscious moment at a time.